Do you guys watch Trash Taste? You know Joey from Trash Taste? Well, he's had a trash take recently. Move over, Kimmel. And people are upset about it. And honestly, I'm kind of not shocked, but shocked that people are shocked. Because if you watch a little bit of Trash Taste, and you only got to watch one episode to know, this is when basic boys pick a hobby, hyperfixate on it, and make their whole life it, but never really go past the surface, but then want to, gatekeep the sacredness of the bubble. So let me show you what kind of happened. This is a TikTok I found that kind of summarizes it and has commentary, and then we'll get into a deeper topic in relation to politics and anime.
Anime tourists to the colonization of the Americas. Are we serious right now? You are really comparing anime becoming mainstream to the death of millions and countless atrocity.
My guy, chill. It's really not that deep, okay? I'm sorry you feel.
I love when someone makes a bad faith argument against your argument of their shit argument. Because mind you, this was his analogy.
These anime tourists, or at least this new rise or era of anime tourists as the Columbus era of anime, much like Christopher Columbus, who went to the Americas, mistook it for India, and called the natives now a term that I'm not allowed to say anymore, and claimed the land for themselves because he was like, well, I discovered it, and fuck all of you guys, this is my place now. And I was like, holy shit, this is exactly what these anime tourists are doing. They're like coming to these unfamiliar lands, planting their flag in the soil, and going, we own this land now. Out of the way, previous people. Your opinions are irrelevant now because you are old and your time is up, and you don't know what good anime is anymore.
What I literally detest about anime dude bro culture is that anime dude bros think that they have a monopoly on anime culture, and because they consume it how they wish to, without consequence, without repercussion, without judgment. Because keep in mind, this man has been making anime content for at least a decade, and he has also been known to be a lolly. And keep in mind, back in the day, one of the hills that he wanted to die on, because again, he's Australian, is the censor culture within Australia and how it's affecting lollies. No, I'm not making this shit up. You had to be there. In fact, I didn't want to be there. And if you don't know what that is, I would recommend you don't look it up. This is all to say that I have never trusted his opinion about literally anything since I was maybe 12. That's how long he's been making content. Granted, he's a 30-plus-year-old man who clearly falls into the otaku weeb culture to the T. Yeah, I know I have a fucking One Piece shirt on. But there are lines, there are limits. He passes those lines, he passes those limits. And you know what? His argument might be that is his culture, because he's half Japanese. And to that I say touche. But you're also half colonizer, half Australian colonizer. So you would know a thing or two about colonizers. In fact, you know what? No, you're not half colonizer. You're a colonizer on both sides, just colonize different areas, okay? Because Japanese niggas is colonizers too. We're not gonna forget about that era. Y'all want to sit up here and call new age anime fans colonizers because they don't put up with the same bullshit that we had to put up with when I was a teenager in anime and in the fucking anime side of the internet. And the bullshit that we had to put up with, the inappropriateness, the quote unquote jokes, the fucking 10,000-year-old dragon little girl, you know what I'm saying? That shit has to die. The fact that y'all are going to war defending a lot of the terrible, terrible aspects of anime culture within the West, because even though he is half Japanese, I think he does not make, as far as I'm aware, content for Japanese people. That is to say that his primary audience is Western English speakers. So he is consuming the anime content, even if he can read it, which I'm sure he can. But even if he reads it natively, he's making content for the West. Okay? So his audience is the West. So he's perpetuating himself, and mostly, in my opinion, Western opinion, onto a Western audience. So what is this from the fucking motherland opinion? Where's that even coming from?
Okay, so I'll go ahead and share this TikTok in the chat. Oh, that's weird.
But in his latest video, he actually
weird. The link for this TikTok, it doesn't want to exist for me. What? It's like the link for the TikTok disappeared. Wait, is this working if I share this link in chat? Yeah, okay, it worked. It was weird, the thing went away. Okay, a few things I just want to tackle before I get to the second clip I want to show you of Joey. So first and foremost, Joey's just being an old grumpy man who does tend to be pretty controversial from my little understanding of him in terms of his liking of adult content on Twitter, his embracing of probably more niche little bubbles in Japan in regards to things that are associated with lolly. Now, I know younger people, Gen Z and Alpha, really struggle to classify and categorize lolly appropriately. And I know that it's really upset people in the past when I've tried to categorize it correctly. But as an autistic girly who likes to make sure that she's categorizing things appropriately, because I do think that a lot of and AFAB people really like cutesy things. And I just want to make sure we're not being associated with liking cutesy things with lolly, because sometimes people think they're the same thing and they're not the same thing. Okay. So Joey does have a reputation of being controversial in regards to his adult content that he likes to like. I don't know how many of it goes down the truly like lolly rabbit hole, but I will just say that a lot of his defensiveness for quote traditional anime and or Japanese culture as it relates to anime, and his annoyance at the younger generations like wanting better storylines that don't have to sort of have these 1,000-year-old, little girls that, they look like they're small, but they're actually 1,000 years old, is just so boomer of him to sit here and say like, we don't need better content. Like, listen, I grew up with Dragon Ball and I liked it, but we could have done without the Master Roshi looking up Bulma's underwear. Like, we could have done without a lot of the misogyny and objectification that we saw throughout these series that we love so much. I love One Piece, but let's be real, the fan service is crazy. The fan service is so out of hand, okay? And I get it. Like, there's parts of it that I'm just like, I roll my eyes at. But some of these crotch shots in My Hero Academia gotta go. They gotta go. It's so unnecessary that I'm like, what is this? What is this shot right here in the, So I understand and I agree that the storylines are way too good and important to be distracted by this like crotch shot fan service that apparently Joey wants to maintain and keep. Okay? So I agree generally that we should update and we should move in a progressive direction. And I do love One Piece, and I do love anime. I grew up with anime my whole life, and I love anime for exactly the reason that it is political, it is philosophical. It's two of those things wrapped into one, but they are kind of different but similar. And we're going to talk about the nuances in regards to that with this next clip I'm going to show you, because I do think there is like a very superficial way to watch anime, and I meet a lot of people who watch it this way, in the same way that anybody watches anything, which is for funsies, which is great. We love fun. But if you're watching content without thinking about it, that's okay. That's the category you're in. Right? But I personally am able to really enjoy the content, see the story for what it is, and I cry and I am brought to just like great levels of emotion watching these really great stories be told, in the same way that I am with most art. Does that mean that I think the art should be made better and that in the future we can talk about making it better? For sure. You know that Apothecary Diaries? In the original, the author did not want her to have a love interest, and he was never written into the story that way. But the TV show said the story would never work the way it was unless we made a love interest. And that's because that's what you want. That's y'all. And that's the point, is like, people make the decision about what is consumed. And the argument I would pose is that we need to change people in a big way. And now that people are changing, it's like, what is this? I could have done without the romantic part or the will they, won't they, and Apothecary Diaries, because but at the same time, I understand, especially maybe even young girls or young guys or whoever is interested in that particular love story, they felt like it was so needed. I honestly, every time I watch Apothecary Diaries, I'm like liking it. And then he gets in the scene, I'm like, get out the scene. He always pisses me off, And that's maybe because I'm 36 now. So when I'm watching it more for like the girl story about this girl who knows about medicine, and she's like a poison taster and she's so cool. I'm not watching it for this boy. But maybe if I was a teenager again, I would have been like, oh my God, but I love him and I love them and I love the will they, won't they. But at the same time, like, what is even the storyline that she's been kidnapped and sold into slavery? Like, what are we talking about? The whole storyline is so silly, you know what I mean? But it is fun to watch, and there are ways to enjoy things while still being critical. And the reason we're critical too is because we notice these things. Look, I loved Gundam Wing growing up. It was my favorite anime, and I loved it because it was so political. I loved it because it was all about, the chess pieces and people's lives and colonization. It was so good in that regard. My whole family's so political. We grew up being political. But you know what's interesting about anime watchers is like, all my brothers and I watch anime. We all watch anime. My sister, everybody watches anime. My parents watched anime with us growing up. They don't really like it, except for Miyazaki, really, but they watched it with us growing up, and then we would have philosophical discussions after watching anime. I doubt Joey is having this with his family. That's the dilemma. It's like, my parents are so political and philosophically oriented that we watch everything we watch turns into a conversation about the deeper meaning. That's how I was raised. I was raised that way, right? And that's the difference. If you're not raised that way, you're not going to have these conversations. You're not going to think about the deeper meaning. You're just going to watch a cool fight scene and get it over with. You're not going to ask yourself the questions. And that's, it is what it is. That's your different category of person. But, there's a a TikTok Gen Z kind of trend right now where it's like, how do you watch Vinland Saga and end up voting MAGA? How does my little brother, who's not left and calls woke people crazy or whatever, how does he go, Brit, you got to watch Vinland Saga, dude, you'll love it? How are we both watching the same anime coming to completely different conclusions? How do you watch, even Avatar The Last Airbender, right? Which is American, cartoon. But like, how do you watch Avatar and go, Iroh's the man and then vote MAGA? Like, how do you do that? You know what I mean? And that's the question. I even saw a TikTok I shared to my Discord a while back about like how Goku would hate you, Luffy would hate you. Let me just say this, because I think this is what's so interesting. I'm going to talk about my philosophical differences here with like the Hasan community, because this is genuinely my biggest pet peeve about this bubble. But that's because I have a very strong desire to categorize things correctly. Look at this TikTok. This is Hasan on Trash Chased with the boys, Connor and Joey and everybody. Here we go.
Political anime, Connor.
Here, let's.
Which is a very political anime, Connor.
That's okay. Well,
It is a very political
what?
anime.
You told me One Piece is very political.
Yes.
What aspect?
Oh my God. Yes, I love this. Okay.
Literally just for Joey to be like, what aspect of One Piece is political? Okay, listen to me when I say my disagree with Hasan is that Luffy specifically political rather than he is just ethical. But Joey, to ask the question, what part of One Piece is political? Luffy is literally a pirate and Garp is literally a marine because they're on different sides. What are you talking about? And by the way, Luffy and Goku, and I want to say this, you know how I have this introspection levels framework? I can't level Goku or Luffy because they're not real people. Luffy and Goku don't think. They're not real people. They don't have real desires or outcomes. They're very simplified versions of this ideal human that doesn't exist, right? Everybody around them, though, those are real people. Zoro, Nami, Usopp, all those real people. Vegeta, Bulma, whatever, that's real people. But Goku and Luffy, these protagonists we fall in love with, they're supposed to sort of be a shadow of a person, right? But like Luffy and Goku are not real people, guys. They're not thinking, they're not processing, you know what I mean? They're not having a real relationship with struggle. So it's funny when I tell my brother, like, you're giving Endeavor Vegeta, he's like, thank you. I'm like, that's not a compliment. See how you want to identify with the Vegeta and Endeavors, but you don't want to think about what that means? I'm not complimenting you. Okay? So again, when people watch anime, they watch it in all kinds of ways, just like you consume any other kind of art, right? It depends on how you are having the relationship with the art. Okay, back to the video.
This is going to piss off everybody, but I'm so right about this, even though like okay, first of all, again, maybe a little bit too long as an art is quite literally about like, indigenous populations being removed from their land and like violently trying to find autonomy and emancipation through violent means directly against like an enemy that is much more powerful than them. That is like, that's like a land back movement, which is inherently very.
Like, I don't know how they watch all of Skypiea. Look, don't spoil it for me. Okay, please. I'm only on episode like 800 or something right now. I'm on the elephant. That's what I'm at. I don't know what episode that is, but I'm on an elephant right now. Okay. And most of the time people bring up One Piece as being political. They talk about how Luffy challenged the whole world government on behalf of Robin. And I just want to bring that to the focus of like, Luffy himself isn't doing that for political reasons like, his bestie from childhood, right? And working with his dad. That's not the same why. Luffy's doing it because of his sense of right and wrong. Now, the question is your sense of right and wrong inherently political? I don't think so. I think you exist outside of politics. I think people first, politics second. Okay? That's different. Right? Like, I think your personal ethics are separate from your politics. But that doesn't mean that One Piece isn't political. One Piece is inherently political. Like, the whole world is political. The whole world is political. But Luffy is not someone I consider political. I consider Luffy personally motivated. And like Goku, they're inherently selfish. They do what they want based off their values and no one else's. They don't care how much they're going to fuck other people over. They don't care if it's right or wrong. Like, Luffy went punch the dragon in the face. You know what I'm talking about, without too many spoilers here, without any thought of how that could impact the people around anybody else. And y'all cheered for it, which I understand is one of the greatest moments of anime history. But at the same time, You didn't think about how it would impact everybody in that fucking village. Like, Luffy isn't political. He's not thinking about other people. He's thinking about himself. That's why Goku's so annoying, because Goku doesn't think about anyone else. He just goes and trains all day because he's thinking about himself. So when you sit there and you think, I'm a Luffy, I'm a Goku, are you sure about, do you want to be that? Because I don't know that you want to be that, you know what I mean? But it's a cool idea. It's a cool, fun experience to think, what if I was that? What if I was always the strongest in the room? Or what if I was always the coolest? Or what if I was always the most chill? Or what if I, didn't hold attachment the way other people do, right? It's like, yeah, there's some fantasy there. There's some, especially boy fantasy there. But I'm saying, and as much as we're enjoying that fantasy, that even other people are not thinking as critically about the media. So here they are criticizing Joey for not realizing One Piece is political, but then have the audacity to think Luffy is political. That's like saying Goku is political. They're not political. They're personal. That's the point. And that's the difference. That's like a very important difference here. Okay, back to the clip.
Political, very leftist.
I feel like I watched I read it.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to describe this to him. He's like, what are you talking about? It's
I was
about
like, man, I saw funny gum.
I love that Connor watched One Piece, watched Skypiea, and just went like, are we watching a different anime? Bro, this is what I'm trying to say. We are not all having the same experience. Well, even as a child, this is why we joke that the same conversations girls had at 12 years old during sleepovers, boys discover in their 30s. Even as children, my friends and I were like, what do you think the political implication of this like scene is in Dragon Ball Z? What do you mean you're not having these conversations? But of course they're not, right? And that's the point. And that's why I say to you, just because we both have watched, One Piece does not mean we are the same people. Look, my whole life, I wanted to marry someone or be with somebody who loved anime as much as I did. And I've dated people who liked anime, and I never liked watching it with them because we didn't watch it the same. We didn't watch it the same. Until I married the person that I married now. And now it's like, okay, cool. We can have long, thorough, detailed, day-long discussion, like just weeks-long discussion about Luffy and whether or not he's political, And that's the point. Now, of course, just because you discover things as a younger person, which many of us do, does not mean we have the maturity or wisdom to understand what we've discovered. And that's why you still have to aim for wisdom, because I'm not a wise person. Just because I realized something logically doesn't mean I had the wisdom to embody it. And I'm still learning to embody that realization, right? Again, it's like almost like a lack of curiosity on their end. Not to think this show may not be political. Like, how could you not have thought about it, right? Chet says he's not revolutionary, but he is political within his world because the world makes his existence political. I don't believe in that concept, and I think that concept is inherently flawed. I think we need to totally deconstruct this. And this is why I say progressives are so limited in their thinking, because they only know how to think of themselves as related to the oppressor. You exist outside of the oppressor's view of you. Who are you outside the view of the oppressor? That is who Luffy is. Luffy does not think of who he is within the confines of the oppressor. Luffy doesn't give a fuck about the oppressor. He doesn't even process they exist. He does not care. That's the point. Luffy doesn't have to care. That's why he represents someone who can't exist. Well, unless you meditate, you know what I mean? Because he actually gets to be a person who doesn't really care. That's why he's friends with Marines or not friends with Marines. His bestie is a Marine, and they're going to fight each other later because he doesn't give a fuck that he's a Marine, because it's not political for him. He doesn't give a fuck. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, we have to deconstruct our existence outside the view of the oppressor. And yes, I understand that when you exist in the world, you feel like the oppressor's view is your only chance of existing within the construct of that view. Like, you don't get to exist outside of it. But I promise you, you can. You don't have to. But as somebody who lives outside the viewer of the oppressor, while acknowledging, like, in my own home, in my own understanding of myself, how I understand myself has been absolutely through the lens of the oppressor until the last 6 years. And then I realized, like, hold up, I must exist outside this. Because I simply do exist. It's a fact that I exist outside of their viewpoint. But how do I engage with that reality? How do I engage with it, right? It's very difficult because the world is very hard right now. The world is very difficult. Like, everything is very obviously oppressive. And yet we still exist. We're born free. That's what Luffy embodies, the spirit of the idea that I'm born free. He just wants to be free. But then what does freedom even mean? That's why you have to explore and deconstruct. It's why it's an exploration of self, right? Okay, let's go back to the video.
Man.
Yeah.
kill
No,
that
One
guy.
Piece is about having fun with your friends and being free.
Yeah,
What?
exactly.
I mean, first of all, Luffy is a terrorist.
True. Luffy is a terrorist. He is a little terrorizing bitch. He is. He's always terrorizing people's businesses, people's towns, people's everything. This man is going around making a mess. He is a messy boy.
He is. He is. I mean, he literally is. He's fighting.
I hate that you're kind of right.
Yes,
I fucking hate that you're kind of right.
Yeah, he is a freedom fighter
Yeah.
in the most like honorable sense of the word.
Yeah.
He is quite literally fighting against an unjustifiable, corrupt military apparatus that
No. He's wrong
is
here.
unjustifiable.
Listen.
I know, right.
Yeah, he is a freedom fighter.
He's not a freedom fighter. Sabo is a freedom fighter. Luffy doesn't give a fuck about your politics. He doesn't give a fuck about the world government. He only cared about the world government when they made fun of his friend. Don't you understand? It's selfish and personal for Luffy. He's not. Freedom fighters are supposed to be about the community. Luffy doesn't care about you. He cares about his friend. Are you his friend? He doesn't care about you. He only cares about himself. That's the point of Luffy. That's the point. You like, how do people think he's a freedom fighter? This is what I'm saying. Media literacy is low. You're wrong. You're just wrong. It is so clear in the show. It is literally spelled out for a 5-year-old to understand. But here's Joey and Connor saying, oh, the show is political. And here's Hasan literally misunderstanding Luffy's role in the show. What? I don't understand. And maybe, I haven't finished it and I'm not up to date yet. But after 800 episodes, I feel like I have a good idea about what Luffy's goals are, especially since everyone always brings up the Robin situation with the world government. That situation had nothing to do with anybody. Because if it had, he would have made this war, he would have done something against the world government prior to this. But he didn't, because he's not a freedom fighter. He just didn't like the way you made fun of his friends.
In the most like honorable sense of the word, he is quite literally fighting against an unjustifiable, corrupt military apparatus that is like holding the entire world hostage, the world government and the Navy. He's literally killing cops. Like,
well, he's killing anybody who annoys him. Luffy fights anybody. If you piss off Luffy, he's gonna fight you. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about your background. He doesn't care who you are. He also doesn't care who you are to make you a friend. He will be friends with you as well. He doesn't care who you are. Luffy neither cares who you are, whether you're an enemy or a friend. As long as you're getting along and you give him meat, he doesn't give a fuck. That's what I'm saying, right? And to the chatter who said, like, I live, within a society and outside of society, yes, we know this. Of course we do. But a lot of people don't know this all the same. Because there are people who literally only think they exist within the construct of the political oppression that they experience. You don't. You exist outside of it. And yet we engage with it because we live in a society, so we have to engage with one another. But if these boys and I are differing on an anime, imagine how the world is the way it is. Boom. Joey and Connor, who are like, this show's political. Hasan, who thinks Luffy's a freedom fighter. And me, who's like, you're all wrong. No wonder the world is crazy. We can't even agree on the point of an anime that is spelled out so easily for me to understand. I feel like it's literally spelled out so clearly, right?
he's killing sea cops and motherfuckers are like, no, that's not politics. What do you mean? That's just like gum man having fun.
Yeah, so see, because Hasan dedicates his life to politics, he also can't see Luffy outside of his political. And because he doesn't like philosophy, I've seen this clip of Hasan saying, his community has told me he doesn't like philosophy. He said that during the Jordan Peterson Jubilee talk, where he's like, man, I hate philosophy people. It's because he only thinks about politics. He can't help but see Luffy through that lens. But because I like politics and philosophy, I'm like, oh, Avi, bro. It's Avi, not political, the way that Hasan thinks it is. They're different. That's why I tell people I don't do politics for a living. I do philosophy. Even though I vote, even though I protest, even though I boycott, I don't call my work political because this is not political comment. This is not political. This is not political. This is philosophical, which yes has an overlap with political, but Hasan is a political commentator. I'm a philosophical commentator. They're different. And yet we cover the same topics because they're both those things. And sometimes they overlap, but they are not always both things.
I mean, the thing is, like, I remember you saying this yesterday when we were having dinner, and I was just like, I think with One Piece, just because of the art style and just the way things are, haha, funny rubber man. Of course, you can take it at that level, and it's still very, very interesting stories. But if you break down some of the stuff that happens, half of it is Luffy going up against a corrupt government or corrupt.
Yeah, but he's not going against the government. He's doing what he wants on his terms for his goals, and he doesn't care if it helps people. If it helps people, he's like, cool. Like, Luffy's like, oh, cool. I'm glad that helped you. You know? Chess says, do you think philosophy is inherently political? What specifically is the difference? Philosophy is the love of wisdom, the why. Political exists within the constructs of political systems, right? Philosophy exists outside of systems, right? Political systems. So we have different bubbles and different overlap, okay? So we have politics and we have philosophy. They absolutely overlap, right? But they are literally different, okay? One is about the why and one is about the how, okay? Why must we feed people? How do we feed people? Politics is the how, philosophy is the why, okay? And of course they overlap because that's really important, but they are very different. And they have to be very different because, well, that's the construct we've built. So I guess there's not a have to, but like there is a reality that they are. Okay. And so that's the problem that I really confuses people. And this is why even for myself, it took me a really long time to decide, do I want to do politics or philosophy? But my joy wasn't found in politics. I didn't care about winning. I needed to know how we were going to feed people, but I also needed to know why we're feeding people. Because that, seemed to be the biggest issue between groups is they didn't agree on why we were doing it in the first place, right? And you can't just say because it's the right thing. People don't know what the right thing is. Like the right thing isn't objective. It's a subjective relationship through conversation. So there's political philosophy, there's politics, there's philosophy, and all these things, again, they're related, they overlap, but it's different. Okay, so if I talked to Hasan and I said, why do you think Luffy's a freedom fighter? Then he'd say, well, what's a freedom fighter? Or maybe I'd say, can you define a freedom fighter, right? And like, that's really important. It's like, well, what is a freedom fighter? Because to me, freedom fighters are political. They're just like in One Piece, okay, with Sabo and everybody, they're a unique group of people who are neither, okay, here we go. Let me see if I can do this. So, okay, there's the government. Here's the world government. Here's the pirates, okay? Here's the freedom fighters. Okay, freedom fighters. Okay, some pirates can be freedom fighters. Some world government people can be freedom fighters because maybe they're, they're like spies or something. But ultimately, freedom fighters, world government, and pirates are three different specific categories. So if you ask yourself, which person do you want to play? Like, who do you want to be in the world of One Piece? Do you want to be a pirate, a freedom fighter, or a world government soldier? So obviously I'm moving towards more like pirate, but also that's because my primary time spent would be adventuring, though it obviously interacts with politics because that's how I live my life currently. My life is primarily living my life to the fullest and adding in activism as a side quest. I do not dedicate my life to activism. I am not doing weekly events. I'm not raising money every day. I am not cleaning the streets every day. I am not volunteering my time. Most of the people in the world who think they're political are not political in the way that Brittany would count it. The only time I would argue that I was political was in my 20s when I really was spending my weekends protesting and cleaning up streets. But it wasn't my primary focus because it just, I decided not to make it my primary focus. I realized I feel like dehumanization exists within these constructs, and though it's important people do it, I'm not called to do it, right? I'm not called to do it. And so I don't do it, but I do my philosophical work. But my philosophical work is about living life to the fullest. It's about being kind and compassionate to your neighbors, being thoughtful about how you understand media and the world around you and the art in front of you. So I think there's just a disconnect that happens. Discord, great point, says politics is all about outcome and philosophy is not exclusively about outcomes. Exactly. If anything, philosophy is letting go of the attachment of outcome versus politics is all about outcome. Luffy doesn't care about the outcome of the world. He cares about being the pirate king, right? I don't care about the outcome of the world. I care about making sure that I do my job, my calling, what I'm here to do in the world, and then I'm going to die. I'm not attached to the outcome. I'm going to do my best and then I'm going to die like everybody else. And yes, I know some people might see me and be like, yes, but you must be making prescriptions because you have a YouTube channel, and you must be making prescriptions because you told people to vote, and you must be making prescriptions because you tell people to be good to their neighbors. I'm making a suggestion based off outcome. I want to reduce harm. And if I want to reduce harm, it obviously feels important that I encourage people to be good to people. That seems like a duh. Okay. So if I lived in the One Piece world, how would I reduce harm? To be honest, I probably wouldn't be a pirate. If I was to do a fourth option, I'd probably just be a villager. To be honest, I'd probably just be a philosopher villager. Because honestly, I don't want to be on a boat like that 24/7 if I'm going to be honest, you know? So I wouldn't be a part of the world government. Ain't no way. I'm not going to be a freedom fighter girl. Ain't no way I'm going to, you know what I'm saying? Go into hiding, fight the governments, be this third party group. Ain't going to do that. And then, because I don't do it now. I don't do it now. You guys know we live in the One Piece reality now. It's called life. Ask yourself what you're doing now. I didn't become a pirate. Do I look like a fucking pirate to you? No. Do I look like a world government person to you? No. Do I look like a freedom fighter? Fuck no. What am I? I'm a villager. I'm a local ass villager with a coffee shop, and people spend their time in this third space. That's who I am in the story, and it's where I'd like to stay. Thank you. Okay? That's what I'm trying to make you understand. Okay? This is the disconnect between people. They keep thinking if I was just in this anime world, this is who I would be. The world is here. The world is now. Who are you going to be in the story? Okay? Who are you going to be in the story? That's the question. All right? Chad said Brit would be the cruise philosopher. I would be the Brook, but instead of music, philosophy. Let's go. Like the wise man on the pirate ship, you know? That's what I'm trying to say, though, ultimately, is that I want people to know that, you know, the media literacy of it all is just also constrained by our bubbles and how we're seeing the world. And so don't beat yourself up too much about it, but just be aware that not everyone's having the same relationship. So like if I was talking to a Joey, it is what it is. But for Connor and Joey to not even think that One Piece is political is amazing. That is the most, what a beautiful, beautiful example of bubbles. But then for Hasan to come to the conclusion that Luffy's a freedom fighter, what a good example of, okay, a bubble. And then here's the question. Who's right? I think I'm right. So then we argue, can there be a correct answer? I think I'm the most correct. I do. I think I am the most correct about assessing Luffy's role in the world. And that's the question. Like the question is, is there a right? Could somebody technically be correct on what Luffy's role is? Or is Luffy what we all need him to be when we consume the art? Is Luffy just like a comfort character? Is he a dream character? Is he I wish I could be him character? What is Luffy meant to do for the viewer and even for the writer? But there's a reason why, you know, he doesn't have any thoughts. Because Luffy isn't a person. He's an idea of a person. But he's not actually a person. You know? It reminds me of the scene where Luffy's sleeping through all the important like backstory scenes. I forget who's telling the story. I don't remember. I can't remember if it's during I can't remember, Doflamingo era or something else. I don't remember, but Luffy, I remember, you know what I'm talking about? Luffy's in recovery. He's just like sleeping. There's so many scenes where Luffy just doesn't care. And that's what I'm trying to convey to you. Like so many scenes of Luffy just sleeping through important moments because he isn't attached. How many times have people tried to tell Luffy a story? And he's like, don't tell me. I got it. Because he doesn't need to know. Because Luffy just moves on like instinct, intuition, like what he wants. He doesn't need to know your story. He doesn't care. Okay? He's like, I'm good. I'm focused. I'm locked in. You know? Yeah, he's not invested. Exactly. He's not invested. But everybody else is like, oh my God, I got to know this story. You know? Chad said he's pure. I don't think Luffy is pure. I think Luffy isn't a person. I just don't think he's a person. He's just an idea. He's a spirit almost. He's like, you know, oh no, pure ID. He's pure ID. What's ID? What's that mean? No, pure ID, pure ID. What is that? No ego. Oh, id. Yeah, well, in a way, yeah, I think so. But not like a enlightened sort of way. Like Luffy doesn't know anything. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of what's interesting is like when you're deconstructing the id, right? When you're deconstructing the ego, when you're deconstructing that thing, the question is, does Luffy know he has one to deconstruct, or is Luffy a person who doesn't have one? I mean, obviously we have these flashbacks of him as a kid, and so, you know, he has some sense of like an ego, but like, does Luffy even process that he has to deconstruct it? That's always the question too, you know? Chat says he is autism coded. Luffy is a lot of things coded, which is actually kind of nice. Because then you can map on your own, you can project yourself onto Luffy. You can map yourself onto him, you know? He's just Luffy. You know? He's just Luffy. Yeah. Yeah, Chad says, I think he is a representation of an idea of who and what he represents will play a large part of what is the One Piece. Yeah, and again, I don't know how this story ends. I don't know where the author is going with it. But if I can take anything to heart, is the scene where Luffy almost dies, where Roger was. And he just accepts it. No fight, no attachment, just says, you know, my bad, bros. He's like, this is it. And he literally just doesn't, he fully just accepts whatever is. Whatever is. And that is just so like, that's, you know, that's the most like the not human part of Luffy. But it's also kind of, you know, I think a lot of people get there. I just don't think it's very many. Should people aspire to be like Luffy? No. Absolutely not. No. Luffy as a person is not responsible in a way that society desperately needs. He doesn't know how to run anything, do anything. He's not dependable in a lot of ways. Luffy is a very specific kind of person. Okay? Trust me, if you had a real Luffy in your life, you'd get really fucking sick of him pretty fast. You'd like him as a guy who came into town to visit, but if he was in your village, it would actually get kind of frustrating pretty fast, right? And so Luffy is an embodied spirit of like knowing the self. One thing Luffy does know is he knows himself without ever knowing himself. Like Luffy is a very one-track mind person. He's not very introspective, but he doesn't have to be, you know? But he's great and he's warm and he's loving and he's interesting, but he's not a real person. Like Goku getting into his 50s and doesn't know what a kiss is. He's not a real person. Okay, Goku who ditches Chi-Chi to go like, you know, train all the time. That's not a real person. You don't want a dad who ditches their kids. Vegeta and Endeavor murdered so many people. They're all superheroes and villains. They all kill people. Endeavor was abusive to his family. Vegeta was literally killing people he was killing whole planets. Like at the end of the day, right? We like these characters for the tropes they represent and what they teach us about ourselves. But being an Endeavor or Vegeta in the story is not a compliment. Yes, they have a good sort of redemption arc, but ultimately, like when I tell my brother, like, you have Vegeta Endeavor problems, I'm not giving him a compliment. I'm like, wake up, Zuko. Wake up, Zuko. You got to wake up. Okay? So you got to think about that, you know? You got to think about it, you know? Wait, Chad said he's very one-dimensional. I wouldn't say Luffy is a one. I would just say he is good to himself and his community. He's a 2 at most, but you can't level him because there's not enough thought that goes into it. But he's not a 1. He's just not a freedom fighter. He's just not somebody who's thinking about the structures or the systems, you know? Oh no, not a 1 level system, 1-dimensional as in flat character. Oh, thank you. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, Chess said he's like not in touch with his feelings or thoughts. No, okay, so in the manga, Luffy doesn't think. His speech bubble doesn't have thoughts. At most, he thinks Pirate King and meat. That's kind of Luffy. So as a character, he's purposely written as somebody who's like he's got 2 focuses, you know? Now, we map onto him other things like friendship and now freedom fighterness, which I would disagree with, obviously, and like all the other things that we wrap into him, right? Chad says, can we think of another character that's similar? I mean, literally, Goku is another one, a really good example. No thoughts in his head, just fighting, just focus. He's so mad about his friends. That's all he cares about. He's very Luffy coded. Luffy and Goku are very much each other, right? I'm trying to think of who else is similar. I mean, most of the protagonists in anime tend to be this sort of like unrealistic sort of character for this reason. Like, filled with unconditional love, no judgment, doesn't care where you come from, loves you regardless, believes in your ability to redeem yourself. But how many times did Goku give Frieza a chance to be a good person, and every time Frieza's like kills everybody? And it's just so funny. And then of course you even love Frieza. You know what I mean? Yeah, Chaz says, if I recall correctly, didn't Hunter x Hunter examine this trope pretty well with Gon? So Gon's another one where Gon isn't really a person. He's written in a way to not be achievable or relatable, really, but yet he's admirable. He doesn't care who you are. He doesn't care where you come from. He only cares about, what he cares about, which is his one-dimensional thought, right? And great. That's an amazing series. Great ending. Like, absolutely one of the most satisfying animes I've ever watched in my whole life. Right. But Gon is absolutely, yes, a part of that group of people where, there's a part of you that wants to be Gon, wants to be Goku, wants to be Luffy. But that part of you that wants to be them is the part of you that's escaping from the cope that you have to be a person. If you were any of these men, you wouldn't really be a person. And that's really hard for people to understand because everybody wants to be them. But that's because you don't understand them. They're not people, Chet says, have you checked out Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood? Yes, but I actually, fun fact, haven't finished it technically because I stopped watching. But I want to because it's one of my favorites that I've never finished. And I haven't watched recently, but I mean, great storyline, great conversation about sacrifice, great conversation, philosophical conversation to be had. Honestly, we should watch Brotherhood in the Discord together. It's so good, right? And I say that as somebody who hasn't even finished it yet, but I have nothing bad to say about it. No, I never finished it. But you know what I mean? To be fair, I probably have like 30 animes I haven't finished. To be honest, like I am truly so ADHD. It's very difficult for me to sit and watch. The fact that I've watched so many episodes of One Piece should tell you how dedicated I've been to it. And I haven't watched it in months. We haven't watched a single episode of One Piece in like 3-4 months. Because I do not have time to watch TV. And when I do watch it, it's in the background while I'm doing something else. And I watch anime Japanese, so I can't do that. But I do not watch shows because I don't have the time. Y'all take up so much of my time, you pretty people. I'm working on you 10 to 12 hours a day, then I gotta sleep. I don't have the time. I don't have the time yet. In a few years, I'll have the time and I'll really bust through everything. Deval with the super chat says, forgive me and enjoy the 5 if you were answered already. Where's Vegeta on your scale? Thank you for the super chat. I've always thought of Vegeta as like a 2B. He hasn't deconstructed a lot. He's done enough. He's gotten better and recovered in many ways. But he's so hyper fixated on him being the Saiyan Prince that he hasn't freed himself from the attachment of being a person within his bubble construct. So I feel like Vegeta is a 2B. He really is attached to the idea of right and wrong, Saiyan pride. He's bogged down by his sort of attachment to his family, his guilt over losing his whole planet. But he never really asks himself, who am I in relation to the universe? He only says, like, who am I in relation to being a Saiyan prince? So I always clock him as like a 2B type of thing. Chad says, what do you think is the most real world relatable character for you out of the Straw Hats? Nami and Usopp, probably. Interesting. You think Robin is the most, is the most real world relatable character? When in your life have you ever met a Robin who travels the world looking for clues that are hidden by the secret government? Who's so smart as a child that she enters a secret society of nerds? When I think of real world person, I think of like actually have met a Nami or an Usopp, which I think we all have. Namis and Usopps are like dime a dozen. They're everywhere. You always meet that guy who extends his hand with a story, Nami, typical girl, girl trying to save her family, doing all this emotional labor for men.